next speaker. Our next speaker is Kiran.
Hey, Alan.
Hi, Kiran. Hello. I gotta congratulate you on your job title. You're the head of API platforms at Silicon Valley Bank. It's one of the best sounding job titles I've ever heard. It's like, you know, you can feel fuzzball tables and like really cool things happening there, right?
It is cool.
So like,
it's fun. This is an area that I've been passionate about for more than a decade. So absolutely excited to do this at Silicon Valley Bank.
Hey, great. Yeah. So you're speaking today about, you know, your API platform strategy and operating models. So if you want to bring up your slides.
All right.
This is one of the things with a live virtual conference. Okay. So let's give Kiran a second to pop back in. Looks like he's having a couple of technical difficulties. Okay. Yeah, maybe someone cut the data pipe from here to the USA. That would be interesting. But yeah, I guess Kiran is just having a couple of problems there. Let's see if he comes back. But to continue a little bit the topic of conversation we're just having about, you know, the whole event-driven notifications and that whole engine behind it. It is, I think, one area that we can start to explore in a little bit more detail. Like I said, I think if you've kind of nailed the whole API thing and you understand them and you're exposing them as products, some of my work at Corner that I began was to talk about webhooks, and yeah, that's really something that you should be looking into. We got Kiran back. Hi, Kiran.
Hello. Sorry, I had some trouble with sharing.
No problem at all.
Able to see my screen?
Yep, you're up and running. I'll leave you to it. Please continue.
All right. Let me just see if I can put this in presentation mode. Let me know if you're able to see it in full screen. Alan?
Yes. Yep.
All right. Thank you. All right. Topics that we want to cover today. I wanted to talk mainly around API platform strategy and operating models, in addition to covering types of APIs, what is the value chain, what are API products, and what does it really mean to treat an API as a product. And we'll talk through how do we define API strategy for an organization. Overview of Silicon Valley Bank. I've been at the bank since April of this year. Previous to that, I've been at Collins Aerospace, which was an interesting gig. I was leading the API platform there as well. Before that, I was at Equifax leading their API journey. At Silicon Valley Bank, this is a very unique bank. We are a key part to the innovation economy, and we connect innovators, investors, and bring them together. And that is kind of defined by our customers as well. So you can see a lot of them are disruptive in the industry. We will move on to APIs and platforms. What is the API value chain and why is it important to understand that? The key here is that typically we are, from a we think from a producer mindset. What do we have that we can expose externally and monetize it or provide an experience? Where we need to think differently from an API value chain perspective is that it's not enough to just expose information or data like we would be doing in a typical integration mindset. Where we need to think through is who are our consumers, what are they trying to achieve, and it's the value of APIs ultimately lie in the experience that's provided, not just in the data or the information or asset or product. And the other way to look at APIs is that they are universal adapters, and I like this concept here. I've been thinking through on how to represent this, and I feel like that is the key here, that it's a universal adapter. We allow different consumers or types of consumers to connect to our assets and connect in a standardized way. So that is the value chain. As we think through this, the takeaway here is that don't just think of how do we expose information or data, but what is the value for the consumers that are going to be consuming it ultimately. We talk through types of APIs and why they are equally important. Private APIs, and private APIs are everything that is used internally by internal developers to develop UIs or products or interfaces, or our partners that develop solutions and products for us. It's the customer-facing channels, the internal systems, and the legacy backend systems that we have, databases that we have, or the vendors and third parties that we collect. So really from an internal or a private API perspective, the value is in innovation and reuse. It's reducing the redundancy and duplication of functionality across the organization. And how do we develop that internal catalog that can be used, essentially treating internal developers as we treat our external developers as well. Agility and flexibility is key here. How fast are we able to discover our assets and services, and how fast are we able to leverage them to deploy new products and solutions? That is the effect of that is that we have reduced development costs because we are not duplicating the same functionality over and over in different domains, and reduced time to market. This is key to business value. End of the day, the API is serving a business outcome, and that is how we should look at it from a private API perspective. Public APIs are what we expose to external developers, customers, partners, what have you. There, the value is a little different than private APIs. Right? We are trying to reach new customers or participate in new ecosystems, trying to drive brand awareness, unlock our value of data. There's a lot of data that sits within organizations that's untapped, that can be valuable to external developers or customers. And we need to explore those options as we think through what are the public APIs that we'll be developing. And of course, there is the direct and indirect revenue opportunities that should be explored with public APIs as well. So the key takeaway here is don't just focus on public or private APIs. Look at them both from a strategic perspective. Think through what value you can derive from both. And both are equally important. API as a product. This is a question that has been around for a while on we should treat APIs as products, and what does that really mean? And what it really means is that we should look at what a product means and what a project means. So a project is where there are fixed requirements at the beginning of the project. There is a specific end date to the project. The funding and the time period for that project is finite, and value is delivered once the project is complete. And the team is also built around that project. Right? So it's a finite state versus a product is really a living, breathing entity, where your requirements are evolving based on how your consumers are consuming the product. There's no real end date to it. The end of life is the end date of the product. Right? And the funding evolves as the product evolves. As things change, requirements change, customer needs change. And there is incremental delivery of value. It's we don't need to wait for everything to be solved for to start delivering value. It is what are the consumers' needs today versus what is evolving, and this is a constant loop that will continue throughout the life cycle of the product. So treating an API as a product means that products don't end. You need to constantly get customer feedback, learn, and then evolve your product offering. We look at what is an API platform. The key to an API platform is not just having an API gateway, a developer portal, or a team that develops APIs. What is key here is that we look at the different aspects of what makes the platform and how do you build and operationalize this whole thing. So when we look at it, the first thing that we need to think through is, do we have API specification, design standards, and tools and governance models? Do we have the training around it where we can train people, that people know what API design means? Are we creating reusable domain models, common domain objects, standardized error messages? Do we have an API first mindset in the organization? Right. Build and test. It is, again, here the key is that everything is driven by design. API first is really, there are two ways to look at it, but I prefer the design first mindset. And everything else is driven by the API specifications that designed for that API. And how do we automate the build and test? What are the automations that are needed to be able to speed? Where are the manual processes today with related to development, testing, or automation deployments that we need to solve for? From an operations perspective, this is key for both IT technology operations and business product analytics. How are our APIs being consumed? What are the issues in terms of understanding from logging, monitoring, alerting, operational analytics, security, throttling? All of that is key to be able to be successful. And lastly, it's the engagement. Ultimately, when you create an API, you're creating it for a consumer. So developer outreach, having a really good developer portal, automated onboarding, SDKs, documentation, there's all kinds of things you can do from the portal for both internal and external audiences. Right? So all of this together make up an API platform. And we need to think through all of these things and how do we get on a journey, what is our MVP that we need to build, and what is our end state, what is our vision. Which brings me to the most important topic here, which is how do you define your API strategy? And there is two main views to look at this. One is the business stakeholders and the technology stakeholders. And there are a set of questions that we need to ask. And this is a journey that we need to go through to define why do we want to build an API platform? Why do we want to build APIs? And some of the questions that we need to ask are ultimately, again, going back to who are our consumers? What does our consumer persona look like, whether they are internal or external? And if you think of it from a bank's perspective, internal consumers will be the relationship managers or the people that manage the customer accounts. And what goals are our customers trying to accomplish? What kind of jobs do they want to get done? What are the experience expectations? And what challenges do they currently face? Whether there are manual steps or gaps in experience, what is the consumer sentiment and feedback based on what they're experiencing today with our products and solutions? And the other thing to look at is, this is where we talk about the unlocking of data. Right? What information assets do we have today that we are not leveraging, that we can leverage to be through an API platform? How do we monetize this? Whether it's direct monetization, indirect monetization, we need to think through that as well. And there is an aspect of risk. What kind of data do you want to expose? What kind of information do you want to expose, and to whom? And what is the risk that are involved whether it's a public API, a private API, or a partner API? We need to consider that as well. And ultimately, the most important thing is, how do we measure success? and from a business perspective. When we look at it from the technology stakeholders, we need to be aligned with the business expectations. So really what we are asking first is, what are the business outcomes that we're trying to achieve, which is, again, related to what the business stakeholders are defining. Then we think through, in order to achieve the business outcomes, we have to ask, what are our current challenges with reliability or time to market or time to value? And do we have the standards, guidelines, and governance defined for APIs? Do we have the skills and mindset on the technology organization to be able to deliver a platform and APIs? And then how many services do we have that are reusable or designed from a consumer perspective? Because it's not enough to just expose a database, for example, through a service. That is not an API, that's just a data access API. And we need to look at what are our development and maintenance costs. This is an aspect that is often ignored because it's assumed that development and maintenance is, when it's project driven, it's considered to be ending at a certain point. We do need to look at it as well. And from an incident or experience or availability perspective, we need to look at what is our current MTTI, mean time to identify, and MTTR. And where are the chances of improvement? Why do we have issues around that? How easy it is for our internal developers, our external developers to onboard and see what APIs do we have, what services do we have today. And documentation is extremely critical, whether it's internal developer experience or external developer experience. So where are we in the current state of documentation? And ultimately, how does technology measure success? So all these questions, and there may be more questions, but these are really your starting points of the questions that need to be discussed with your business and technology leadership to define what your API platform strategy is. The key takeaway here, again, is put your consumers first when you define your platform and technology product strategy, which is, for technology, business and customers are your consumers. API platform strategy. We talked about how do we define the strategy. The next step is really, once you have defined a strategy, it's how do you take that strategy and lead with your guide your execution. A lot of times, and I've done this as well, is we get straight into execution. Let's build an API platform. Let's build the processes, or let's teach people, without having a clear vision on what you want to achieve from an API platforms and what your API product portfolio is going to look like. It's going to be really difficult for you to, one, establish why you're building a platform, why you're building APIs. So really having a clear strategy for both internal and external APIs tied to your business value creation. And establishing that API first model is key. That is your vision statement, that's your mission statements. That will drive your people, process, and technology execution paths and roadmaps. What do we need to build from a people, which is skills, trainings, governance, and the culture? What are the processes where we need to figure out where we need to have how do we operate, and where do we have manual processes that can be automated? What is our delivery model? How do we scale? And technology is where you really are building the platform that will support the people and process, and ultimately help you achieve what you're trying to with your API strategy. Operating models. This is another area that is of very, very high interest to me. This is something that I've been working through, and I've seen various models. And it's important to look at both and figure out what works best. And this is based on my experience and my experience doing this at different organizations. So there are two primary models, which is your centralized governance and delivery. And then there is the centralized governance and federated delivery. And we can look at both of them. So typically in a centralized governance and delivery team, there is a central team that is responsible for developing all APIs. So if you were to put in a bank's perspective, There's a payments domain team, there is accounts domain team, there's servicing domain team that have the domain knowledge of their of payments, for example. But there is an API development team that's developing the APIs. There are some disadvantages to this longer term, right? Which is really what is happening here is that the domain teams are not responsible or accountable towards the business outcomes, since they're not responsible for creating the APIs. It doesn't align with the API first mindset, because the domain teams are really not responsible or knowledgeable or have the skills to be able to develop APIs. And we're creating another layer, and that will continue to happen. If tomorrow we need another API, we're going to scale, or we need to just keep adding resources to this development team, because ultimately this becomes a bottleneck for execution. There's no scale here. And the domain teams get no experience building APIs in general, whether it's internal or customer facing. So when we look at the other model, which has been successful, it has scaled. I'm sure that there are other organizations that have leveraged this. But what we are talking about is here having centralized governance and oversight from product and technology, which is establishing an API platform team, which will provide the guidance, the skills, the standards, and build the platform for the domain teams to be able to build the APIs, manage their APIs, and manage their customers. So why is this important? The important path here is when we say that we want to be an API first organization, we need to be able to make the domain teams responsible and knowledgeable to be able to build APIs, own those APIs, and manage their customers. So that is where the centralized governance and federated delivery helps, because your standards, your governance, and your checks and balances are all managed by the platform team, whereas the domain teams now have the skills, the knowledge to be able to develop those APIs. And from a scaling perspective, it is a highly scalable model, because all of that information and understanding of APIs lives within the domain. And from a visibility perspective for both product and technology, this is providing that centralized visibility into how many APIs do we have internally, which APIs can be productized, right? What are the challenges from both an internal and external perspective? So having that centralized visibility is key to overall success with your API platform. That is all I had to share. Happy to take any questions.
Okay, thanks very much. That was very good. A lot of it resonated with me, especially from my time at Swisscom. I can see that your approach is very similar to the one that we were following there, so that's good. Got a couple of questions for you. One is around your API as a product strategy. So did you do any work there on really trying to find out who is the customer of the API product? Right. I mean, yeah. Obviously, developer is one persona, but did you identify any more customers?
Absolutely. So when we think of it from a consumer of the product, there is the direct.
Oh. Well, we lost Kiran there. Let's give him 1 second to see if he comes back.
All right.
And here he is. Hi, Kiran.
Hey,
sorry we lost you.
Not sure what happened, but hopefully you're able to hear me now.
Yes, can. Yep.
Yeah. So when it comes to customers, it's important to think it's not just the customers that you are directly have a relationship with, but it's the partners that build experience. It's the developers that are building new experiences. So think about the DoorDashes of the world, or the Amazons of the world, that are really providing that contextual banking of providing, in case of banks, providing banking capabilities in the context of your experience. So if you need to make a payment within your CRM application, or you need to make a payment through your accounting application, right? that is the advantage that you get through an API product that you don't typically get if you're just providing that experience from a web or a mobile channel, right? So that's the power of APIs, where you are opening up your experience and your capabilities to provide contextual experiences to your customers.
Yeah. So you're identifying also, that partner ecosystem, and that's your target customer.
Absolutely.
Great. Just to clarify as well, in your presentation, so what you're saying is that you prefer the federated model to the decentralized one, right? So you're saying that having the API development within the domains is the best way to proceed, right?
Yeah, and there is a journey to it, right? So a lot of times we can scale to that model. You can start with a centralized team and scale to a federated model. But it's important that you have a vision of having that API first mindset and skills across the organization, and not within a specialized API development team.
Yeah. Then I've also seen that you have one team specialized in keeping the platform running,
right?
Handling like some security elements and really using it as a service, so that your domain teams don't have to like reinvent the wheel. It's given for them, but then they can pick up and use their domain knowledge.
Absolutely. Yep.
Hey, Kiran, I really enjoyed that. Thanks very much. We're going to move on to the next presentation. Thanks.
All right. Thanks. Bye.
Bye.